Welcome back, Lorcana players. It's Poisonous. This video is going to talk about some new meta decks, and the reason that there are new meta decks to talk about is because yesterday Ravensberger announced that they're banning two very important cards from competitive play. So they've banned Hiram Flaversham and they've banned Fortisphere. Recently, all of the big tournaments have been absolutely dominated by Sapphire Steel and Ruby Sapphire, and they have reacted to this, trying to rebalance gameplay a little bit by banning two important cards. Hiram has been a staple in every Sapphire deck since set 2 because of his ability to really draw a lot of cards and get a lot of value out of Popsicle. He's been the main draw engine of every Sapphire deck, and now he is no more. Ravensberger's position is that Sapphire doesn't have an identity that includes that kind of card draw, and that it was basically overpowered in enabling the deck to do things that they didn't intend for it to do with that identity, and with its prominence in the current meta, they felt like they needed to ban the card. I, for one, think that banning is better than changing the cards like they did with Bucky and putting an errata on that. It's just simpler and allows maybe in the future for them to bring the card back to competitive play if things change. The other card that they banned was the Fortisphere, stating that Steel's identity is not items, and that having a really good item that draws cards and basically turns Steel into an item deck. So it made it too consistent and did not fit with the identity of Steel, which is going to really hurt the Sapphire Steel item deck because it's losing Hiram and the Fortisphere. So while these changes are definitely controversial, I know that there's a lot of people that have negative opinions about it. I think that it is kind of boring to see the same decks completely fill like the top 8 of a tournament. So from that perspective, I can see why the change is needed, but I can also see why people are frustrated that they collect the cards, they build these decks, and then after spending money on it, they basically can't use those cards anymore. So it does suck, but the meta moves on. We're gonna have to get ready for set championships. So I've put together a few decks that I think are gonna see a bit of a rise in prominence in competitive play over the next few weeks. So let's take a look at those deck lists and see how it's going. So the first deck I want to talk about is the green purple discard deck. I did do a video about this recently on my channel. I've been playing this online pretty consistently all along since I put out the video, and I have about an 80% win rate with the deck, and that's into a full meta of red blue and blue steel, which included, Hiram and Fortisphere. So with the bans, I think that this deck will be even stronger than it was before because those were the most difficult matchups, and unless something else rises up in the meta, the best matchups against this deck have gotten worse. So this deck seems like it should just by default get better. So this deck uses a large Diablo package in order to more consistently get Diablo out on turn 2. So you have the 2 sets of 1-drops. We also are running the 2-drop with Evasive and Challenger as an alternate shift option, and this card is really important in mirror matches, so you put it down on turn 2 to threaten their Diablo. We're also running Ursula for discard. Fox and Crab are here to help with any more aggressive deck and to bounce our characters as needed. We have Prince John, and then our usual discard package of Hypnotize, Sudden Chill, and a Lucifer. We're also running We Don't Talk About Bruno, which is kind of a discard card. It's a removal/discard. If you have Prince John out, you do get to draw a card and remove their best character off the board usually. And we're also running Friends on the Other Side, which is really great if you can shift Diablo and immediately sing it to refill your hand. And we're running Genie as our card draw engine outside of Diablo. We want as many evasives as possible because they're hard for opponents to challenge into, and they do well fighting in the mirror match. We also have Goat. For a while I was running the Queen, the new one that let you put cards from the discard onto the bottom of the deck. I was using that to remove items so they couldn't bring them back with Tamatoa, but I've switched back to Goat for the time being now that the item stuff is going to be, I think, less prominent. We're running Elsa. She's a great card for exerting to take down threats, and deal with opposing Diablos. And we're running Cricky to give our characters a boost in strength when we need to fight for board. This deck has a lot of value in how many cards it can draw, so you get to your discard package more consistently, and you have the ability to play lots of characters that can fight for the board with Crab and Fox, boosting them up to take down big threats. I think that this deck is going to see a lot more play now. I've already started to see a lot more mirror matches online with it, and I think that it is quite strong, and it's probably going to be a top tier deck in the new meta. I know that a lot of people don't like playing against discard, but it is, a very strong way to play the game and control your opponent's resources as a way to get victory. So I think that you either need to be comfortable playing it or build your deck to play around it. Green purple discard and green steel discard I think are going to be very prominent for the next few weeks. So the next deck I want to talk about is green steel discard. This deck is very similar in principle to the deck that we just looked at, with the goal of controlling the game by discarding your opponent's hand. But the difference between this deck and the other deck is that this deck uses songs as removal to control the board, where the other deck uses the bodies to control the board. And this deck has larger characters like Beast and Pete, and this deck also has access to the small Pete, which prevents actions. So both decks have their merits as a discard deck. I think that we're going to see probably an equal amount of both in the new meta. Taking a look into the deck list, we have our Diablo 1-drop and 3-drop. We're running Morph as a secondary option to shift for Diablo, but it's also a shift on curve for Beast, and it works also as a shift for Space Pirate Pete potentially. We have Ursula, Mr. Smee for some good questing and board control with his 3/3 body. We have Prince John. We have the double singing Ursula, Deceiver of All, to get extra value out of all of our removal songs and our sudden chill discard. We have one copy of Lucifer, and we're running 4 copies of We Don't Talk About Bruno in this deck, which can be sang by Lucifer, Beast, and Pete for better tempo, but it works really great as removal cards against anything that's kind of sticky or annoying on the opponent's side, especially where we don't have as many evasives in this deck. We can use the We Don't Talk About Bruno to deal with opposing evasives when trying to protect our Diablo. And we also run the Hidden Cove. The Hidden Cove is a way to increase the strength of our characters, which gets past things like Brawl and Sisu. So it's very common to put your characters like Diablo and Ursula, Deceiver of All, in there as soon as possible to make her hard to remove. The Space Pirate Pete offers really good synergy in this deck because it gives your pirates, including himself, resist +1, so your Smee doesn't take damage at the end of the turn like he normally would, and it prevents your opponents from exerting their characters to sing songs, so this can really slow down Steel Song as well as like the opposing discard players if they are using a lot of songs in their deck. The Sad Beast is a really great draw engine. He's a threat that opponents can't usually ignore. They'll prioritize removing him or at least damaging him to get rid of the extra card draw that he provides. But he does quest for 2, he can sing We Don't Talk About Bruno, so he's a strong card, and at times he's been too slow for the meta, but I think that with the changes, he's able to come back into play again. So I do think that we're going to see more discard in general. The green steel discard is slower, at least out of the gate. It's slower than the purple discard, but it does have its merits, and I think in the mirror match, all the extra removal probably favors it a little bit, but it is a complicated mirror match because of the focus on protecting your Diablos and removing the opposing Diablos while making sure you don't run out of hand cards. Alright, the next deck is a classic, old reliable Steel Song with the potential that red-blue is less prominent, the big Sisu not being as likely. There's a good chance that Steel Song is going to pop back up as a main contender deck, so here's a Steel Song list that I think will do well. We have our usual 1-drops of Cindy and Daisy. I'm running the Robin Hood package. I think that the Robin Hood shift is really good in a steel heavy meta, and we're going to see more steel. So the Robin Hood is a good board control card. 6 willpower makes it hard to remove. We're running a couple of new 2-cost cards. So one of them is Troubadour. He's a resist 1, singer 4. He replaces the old Ursula that was in that spot. Because he's an ally, he also synergizes with Miss Bianca. So she's a 6-cost 5/5. 5, but she costs 2 less if you have an ally in play, so it's very easy to get her out on turn 4, giving you a nice 5/5 body that can also sing Whole New World. We're also running the 2-cost Penny. It's an Amber Steel card. It's a 1/2 that quests for 2, but her ability says when you play this character, you can remove up to 2 damage from chosen character, and they gain resist +1 until the start of your next turn. So the idea here is that if you have Cindy out on 1 and she's going to sing a song and she's going to be exposed, that the resist may protect her. You also have the option of healing a Smee and giving him resist so he doesn't take damage at the end of a turn. So she's a kind of an aggro card with an upside. She has the same body as the Lilo, a 1/2 that quests for 2. So I think that the upside here is probably a little bit better than the exerted Lilo coming back into play. We do have the 2-cost Smee, we have Ariel of course, Lawrence, who's been a staple in Steel Song and most Steel aggro based decks. He's a 4/4 most of the time and he quests for 2. Of course we're running Pete because Pete is the greatest Steel card of all time. We're running 4 Rapunzel for the heal draw effect. And then we have our song package, which is kind of pared down to just the essentials of Storm, Strength, Along Came Zeus, and Whole New World. I think that Steel Song is always a threat because of how much tempo it can generate, and it's nearly endless resources if it slings together a couple Whole New Worlds. You go nice and wide, and most decks can't deal with that. Sisu was eating this deck up, but if we see the downturn in Sisu, then this deck will rise back to prominence. I don't think it's going to take very long before you start to see Steel Song popping up all over the place. I've gone with the traditional Steel Song list here. I think that the Diggy Hole or aggro Steel Song is also going to be very good, and it wouldn't surprise me if you see that deck as well. So our next deck is Red Purple. Never thought that we'd see the day that people were asking for Ruby Amethyst to be back in the meta, but here we are. So this deck is a little bit more aggressive. It's heavy on the evasive side. It's doing this to combat Diablo and give opponents who aren't running evasives a challenge into being able to deal with your characters on board until we get into our bigger stuff. So we have our 1-drops of Chernobog's, Diablo, and Magic Broom. These are all great cards because they replace themselves. They can quest and then draw you a card. For 2-drop, we're running the Pegasus. This card is good at taking out a Diablo even if it gets moved to Cove. We're running 3 Crab. We're running 3 of the Peter Pan Shadow Finder. This card is important because it has Rush, so it's able to rush in and take out a Diablo, but it's also important because it gives your other evasives Rush. So if you play Peter Pan on 3, you can play Genie on 4 and draw a card, and Genie can rush and take out something. So you are able to deal with those smaller characters on the board a little bit faster. It also ties into the Yago card. Yago is evasive. He has Vanish, but he's got a huge body for a 4-cost. He's a 4/6, and if he comes in on 4 with Rush, thanks to Peter Pan, he can swing and take out a big character and still have lots of body left to fight for board and trade into other things. We're running 3 copies of Goat, 3 copies of Elsa, and 3 copies of Maui. We're running 2 of the Madame Medusa. I think that being able to remove characters with 3 strength or less is big into a lot of Steel matchups, and we're going to see more Steel. It's good at removing Diablo. So she's back in the meta, I think. And we're running 2 copies of Big Sisu to shift off of the Emboldened Warrior. This way we can deal with a wider board, taking on things like Steel Song without relying solely on Be Prepared. And then we have 4 copies of Brawl, 4 copies of Friends on the other side, and 4 copies of Library to assist with our card draw. The Library is also really great in conjunction with Be Prepared, so we can wipe the board, set up a location, and then protect our location. So this red-purple deck, you'll know, doesn't have foxes and snakes, so I'm not running as heavy on the goats for that reason, because I think that without the bounce package, the goat isn't as much the win condition as the evasives, and being able to kind of freely quest with them is. We do have some goats though, because it does provide, that last bit of push that you might need, but I think that you could also potentially go down in goats and go up in like Elsa and Maui, and the deck would still good. And because we're not running the bounce package, I think that there's no need really to run the rabbit. The genie Genie is good enough for card draw, plus the evasive body is really good right now, and we're not going to get that extra card draw from bouncing and replaying our character over and over again, so the Genie is the choice for this deck. And last but not least, we have Purple Steel. This is a mid-range deck. Purple Steel has already kind of been lurking in the meta, but with the fall of Red Blue and Blue Steel, I think that we'll see an increase in market share for Purple Steel. So this deck is kind of a hybrid in that it's running a shift package along with some of the more traditional elements of Purple Steel. So for 1-drops, we're running Chernobog, Diablo, and Robin Hood, so we can run a pretty aggressive opening. We're also running 3 copies of Fire the Cannons. This is strictly to deal with Diablo and Cinderella. In 2-drops, we're running Smee, Calhoun, and a couple copies of Doc for some extra card draw. We're running the Giant Cobra. The 4/4 body is great, and being able to discard an unwanted card in order to gain lore is also very strong when you're trying to close out the game. We have Fox for bounce shenanigans and to take out characters. We're only running 2 copies of Crab because we have the Calhoun, we have the Robin Hood. We don't need as much strength boosting. We are running 4 copies of Pete, 4 copies of Genie. I think that right now Genie is the in meta 4-cost draw. It's evasive, so it can help deal with Diablo. We're only running 2 goats. We're running 4 Elsa. Again, it allows you to exert characters and take out Diablos. And then we have the big Robin Hood. For songs, we're running Strength of a Raging Fire to help with removal, and we're also running 2 copies of Grab Your Sword. I think that the wide boards of green with Diablo and the Steel Song and some other more aggressive decks, that the Grab Your Sword is going to get some value here. And in matchups where it's not as good, then you have the option to discard it with Giant Cobra. So instead of running Zeus, this way you have a way to deal with, an aggressive early opening by playing Robin Hood, shift Robin Hood, sing Grab Your Sword. I think that it can be a huge gut punch to opposing decks that dump a lot of their hand early and try and gain resources back later. So I think that it fits well with the identity of this deck. We're also running 3 copies of the Library, the passive lore gain plus the extra card draw when paired with our 1-drops, and trading characters is very strong. So I think that all of the decks that I have posted in this video have common threads of either they have purple or they have steel. I think that when red and blue are less prevalent, then those 2 colors become kind of the mainstay of the meta. Your deck needs to have either steel for the bodies and the removal, or you need to have the purple for the card draw and resource generation. And I think that we're going to see a bit of a more balanced and diverse meta instead of seeing all the top 8s with the red blue and the blue steel. I don't want to see them not be played at all, but I think that some reimagining needs to happen, and these decks will be a little bit more competitive going into set championships. So let me know what you think. Drop a comment. Tell me what you like about the decks that I've posted here. Tell me your thoughts on the ban. Do you think the ban's a good idea? Do you think that they didn't ban enough cards, or they should have just banned one and not the other? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Thanks for supporting the channel, as always, by watching the video. If you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. I'm on the push to 1,000 subscribers now. We're over 600 and counting, and your support means a lot. Thanks. Cheers.